loop, where not only does the idea of synergy allow us to optimize the conditions, the apartments, they get up into the sun, the offices have the shaded views in the northern courtyard. But more importantly, when you're doing a neighborhood from scratch, one of the drivers of the success of the neighborhood is the capacity to create the feeling of community and sort of neighborship. And the 8 House expands the public realm from being like traditionally restricted to occurring at the street level to invading the three-dimensional space of the urban block. So the 8 House is not just like a pretty facade or like an exciting sculpture. It's really a three-dimensional urban condition that allows public life to invade all of the three-dimensional space of the city. Where the 8 House crosses itself, all of the different amenities are connected in a giant social space. This is Daria modeling for the photos. And essentially all of the amenities are connected from the ground to the roof terrace. And as a result, the 8 House becomes almost like a man-made extension of the otherwise completely horizontal landscape of Copenhagen. In Copenhagen, we don't have a Montmartre. There's no place where you can sort of enjoy the view of your city. And now people actually go to the 8 House just to go for a walk and enjoy this sort of unprecedented man-made landscape of this part of town. When we came to North America, one of the first projects we did, which is also portrayed in Being, is a project in Vancouver. This very sort of dense residential downtown, full of these little towers. It's a model imported from Hong Kong. Vancouver is also called Hongkouver. It has like this massive Chinese population. And right where the bridge enters downtown, our client has a site that's being like torn to pieces and cut into triangles by the bridge. And one of the ideas, like one of the main drivers of sustainable cities is density. So if you want to sort of increase the density of an already fully built town, you have to find ways of exploring these underdeveloped sites. So we started like mapping the different constraints, the setback from the street, the setback from the bridges. Then there's a 30-meter setback that is meant to make sure that nobody lives and looks straight into heavy traffic. Then there's another setback from the adjacent park. And finally we're left with a tiny footprint of 600 square meters. And the basic thinking is that since our client owns all of the land, and if the rule has to do with creating a minimum distance, when we get 30 meters up in the air, we can actually come back out and maximize the amount of really nice apartments with beautiful views. So when you drive over the bridge, it becomes almost like somebody pulling a curtain aside, sort of welcome to Vancouver. It reminded us very much of this moment in Manhattan history where the Flatiron was a product of the developments in real estate value of New York, and also the advent of steel structures and elevators, and suddenly a completely small and impossible site became a really interesting development. So we're sort of continuing this idea, but taking it sort of one step further. For now, we call the building the Fat Iron, but our client hates the name. But also, maybe just as importantly, underneath the bridges, we're creating spaces. You can't have residential, but you can have shops, offices, restaurants. And we're trying to sort of occupy the space underneath the canopy of the bridge above to turn it into sort of an interesting new form of urban space. And one of the things we came about is that Vancouver has a lot of really nice contemporary photo artists, Jeff Wall and Roderick Graham, just to mention a few. And they actually already work with this idea of mounting their photos on light boxes. So what we're going ahead with as an idea is almost like a hybrid between street art and the 16th Chapel. We're sort of turning the underside of the bridge into this contemporary photo art gallery that also becomes the illumination of the streetscape. Essentially like an outdoor photo museum turned on its head. Another sort of because like in Copenhagen, nothing is taller than 5 to 10 floors. So really, like coming to America was the first time we started dealing with high rises. We got invited by a client, Brian Stoll. It's also a story from Being Big. To look, he had spoken with the family that owns the Space Needle in Seattle. It's the landmark of the World Expo in 1962. And he found out that the family makes $20 million per year just on selling elevator rides. So he thought, we should do the same for Phoenix. And one of the things you need is that you need a city that has absolutely no landmark. Done. And then essentially the ambition was, each city somehow has a building associated with it. And they were aiming for having like 700,000 visitors a year and becoming sort of the identity of Phoenix. So we thought like one of the paradoxes when you go up into a sort of a view tower, an observation deck, is that even though you're very high in the sky, it's a very horizontal experience. So we thought one of the most exciting American architectural typologies is the Guggenheim Museum by Frank Lloyd Wright, where you have this sort of a spiraling void, like spiral that contemplates a central void. Maurizio Catalan did this amazing exhibition where he actually suspended all the art in the void. And we thought, let's try to sort of take this idea and crossbreed it with the Space Needle. So essentially turning the Guggenheim Museum inside out. Basically turning all of the elements of the program into a linear event where you arrive at the top and move through all the different spaces. We need a very small site, then we have to drop a big pin, almost like a sort of Google Earth. And then essentially you have an elevator that takes you to the North Pole, and then you sort of descend across the equator and back down again. So this is the big pin in Phoenix. The elevator going on the outside, so we can keep the column as skinny as possible. You enter through this hole. You arrive at the North Pole, and then you have this sort of essentially these cantilevering force. So the X-ray of the building is sort of completely transparent. So essentially you have this spatial, I can feel that this building is really touching on something in the room. But you have this sort of the diagonal horizon of the continuous spiral. You have the horizontal horizon of Phoenix. This is like the ET moment. And of course, like we're building in a desert, so by making a sphere, we have like the maximum contained volume with a minimum surface. We're trying to use the sort of self-shading of the cantilevers as much as possible. Also, you have the concrete exposed on the core, on the floors, and on the ceiling. So you have all of the thermal mass, so you can cool the building at night, and then it radiates cool at day. Also with extremely generous ceilings, we have 6-meter ceilings. We can actually create a chimney effect, so you only have comfortable temperatures at the bottom. And finally, because this is creating like a viewpoint 150 meters up in the air, we thought that it could be interesting to work with photovoltaics, because the sun is always shining in Phoenix. So you take like a 3,600 square meters photovoltaics, puts it on a roof, and we can create any image. This is the flag of Phoenix. It is a phoenix, the bird. And we know that every year at least 700,000 people will actually see this giant artwork on the roofscape of the adjacent science center. So of course when you're doing